What's up, you guys? It's your boy Trippy, and I know I'm a little late to this, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about the fights this past weekend, but preferably, and particularly, the third title fight, Aljamain Sterling versus Petr Yan. So this had a very controversial ending, and I couldn't just go without giving my 2 cents on it. So Petr Yan basically screws it all up for himself with a knee to the face of a downed opponent in Aljamain Sterling. So the most disappointing about this is that I picked Petr Yan to win. I got every single pick on that card right except for this one, due to the illegal knee. So the fight was going pretty much how I predicted. Aljamain Sterling was coming out crazy, putting that paste on Petr Yan and really shelling up Petr Yan. Honestly, showing some red flags in Petr Yan's game, but Aljamain Sterling could not keep up with his own pace that he set and gassed out and started getting picked apart, not just on the feet, but in the fight, period. He was getting taken down by these weird-looking takedowns that Petr Yan was going for. He was getting, at a point, Petr Yan even took his back. And so that's insane because, yes, Aljamain started fast and early, but Petr Yan started picking up because I even said it. Petr Yan, people don't say this enough, but he is a slow starter. He is not the fastest starter. He takes his time to download the data and then start as the fight goes on to pick you apart and bully you in there. And so Aljamain Sterling did really good of always being in his face. That is the way he can beat Petr Yan. That is the way. That's going to really show a lot of people that is the recipe to beat Petr Yan, because he can't just only, whenever you're fighting, and I know I'm saying this and I'm not a mixed martial artist, but you can't just only focus on defense. You can't just only think of not get hit. You have to fire back to make them respect the pressure. Petr Yan was getting backed up and only worried about his defense, going into a defensive shell. He continued to move his feet, but he would just cover his head up and tore up with body kicks, leg kicks, and was open to takedown attempts. Though Aljamain couldn't get him to the ground that efficiently, he couldn't get him to the ground that efficiently, but it still says something that Petr Yan, there is a bit of a hole in his game that I feel like other fighters can exploit seriously. But what fighter's gonna do that? I mean, there's not just a ton that can really just do that other than Aljamain Sterling, honestly. But the worst part about it was that Petr Yan was on his way to winning this fight. He was absolutely on his way to winning this fight, whether it was stoppage or decision win. He was about to win the fight, but unfortunately, he threw that illegal knee that just screwed up everything. Now Aljamain Sterling is the champion. And, though it was a controversial ending, Aljamain didn't do anything wrong. I mean, he took the knee. I mean, you can't fault the guy for taking an illegal blow, So, Aljamain Sterling is the champion. They're gonna run it back immediately. And, though Aljamain Sterling is the champ right now, it's going to be short-lived because I absolutely know for a fact now, seeing this fight, which is interesting, is that Petr Yan is absolutely going to win this fight. Actually, I'm not going to say absolutely because MMA is MMA at the end of the day. Anything can happen, so I'm not completely Xing Aljamain Sterling out, but let's just go into the rematch. Let's see how the rematch could go for the two. So Aljamain Sterling already put his cards all out on the deck. That's the problem with rematches, and when you're fighting the champion, you really only have one good shot to beat him because you then show all your techniques and put all your cards on the table. Now Petr Yan has seen everything Aljamain Sterling can do, and when you look at the fight and their skills, Aljamain Sterling really has no other way to win. If he is patient and he doesn't bulldoze Petr Yan in the beginning and get him back into that defensive shell, and he tries to pace himself, that gives Petr Yan more time and more of the energy storage, for lack of a better term, to go to work on Aljamain Sterling. And I said it, Petr Yan's opponents make that mistake of always backing up against him. And, for Aljamain Sterling, who doesn't have the best striking defense, he can't just allow Petr Yan to back him up, especially if it's early. Because then if you give those early rounds away to Petr Yan, he picks up as the fight goes on. And so that would be even harder for Aljamain Sterling to then pick up the pace in the later round when Petr Yan gets better at those times. It'll just make it tougher for him. And so that is why I think Petr Yan is just going to recapture the belt anyway. I think Aljamain Sterling's reign at the top will be short-lived, only due to we basically seen how the fight will go, in my opinion, every single time. I think that fight goes that way in the rematch. I think Aljamain Sterling is going to come out, whether he could shock me and he could just go out and try to pace himself, but I just don't think that's the best idea to not get in his face immediately. But now Petr Yan, if he gets in Petr Yan's face again, Petr Yan is going to be expecting it. Aljamain Sterling, unless he doesn't get too excited, because that's the thing. That's the same problem we've seen against Usman and Burns. They get too trigger happy and they get too excited and they try and go in there and put this crazy pace that they can't even keep up with themselves. And I just don't see Aljamain Sterling coming up with a game plan that could thwart those. But once again, this is MMA. Anything can happen. Aljamain Sterling can absolutely win this fight, take him down, take his back, and choke him out. That is still 100% a very, very likely scenario to happen because he is the more superior on the ground. But Petr Yan showed some great defense too that opened a lot of people's eyes. People were underestimating his defense. So that just makes for the fight to be more interesting. It's going to be even more bigger now because it was the most exciting fight on the card. So a lot of people saw it. And so that's just going to make for another great fight. But I do see Petr Yan recapturing UFC gold and eventually moving on to fight another contender. But only time will tell. So we shall see. It's been your boy Trippy, and I'm out, man.